Hi friends, this is Sneha and we are here on our fourth episode of Friends of Sneha J, and today we have with us my dearest friend Kate from Queensland, Australia. Kate Witteveen. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, pretty Witteveen, but yeah, Witteveen's pretty good.
So Kate is a success and empowerment coach, author, and a recovering perfectionist with a Ph.D. in psychology and a passion for preventing burnout and enhancing well-being. And today we are here to talk more about her first book, Why Being Good Can Be Bad for You. Hi Kate, thank you so much.
Hi Sneha. Thank you for having me. It's so lovely to chat with you today.
So tell us a little bit about what made you write this book, like why being good can be bad for you. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, well, I think it's something that I always wanted to write a book, and my big question was, what would it be about? And so I've been playing with ideas for a long time, and it was a critical mass of, I saw so many clients in my coaching practice who really were very accomplished, high achievers, so clever, so capable, and yet so hard on themselves. And I really recognized myself in them. So a few years ago, I experienced a pretty significant burnout. And now that I've got a bit of space and time from that, I can see that a lot of my burnout came from my own unrealistic expectations of myself. So the topic of why being good can be bad for you is really about when perfectionism and saying yes and people pleasing and all of those things that feel like the right thing to do actually turn out to be pretty detrimental to your own health and well-being.
And who is this meant for mostly?
Sure. I think it's meant for anyone who can relate to that idea of getting stuck into other people's expectations. And if you're feeling like there's a chance that you may be heading for burnout, or you're just feeling really kind of unfulfilled, and probably people who can recognize, you've done all the things that you feel like you should have done. So you've ticked all the boxes, you've got an education and you've done some things and got a job, and you just don't feel like it's enough. It feels like there's something missing. And often that's because, you're a bit out of alignment in the sense that the script that you're following actually isn't meant for you. It's more that traditional expected script, and just recognizing that actually maybe there's something more or different that would bring you more joy and peace and all of those wonderful things.
Right. So for burnout, is like not finding that road of passion one of the biggest signs for burnout, or what else could be a sign for that?
Yeah, sure. So burnout actually was recently recognized by the World Health Organization in its latest update. So 2019, the ICD-11 recognized it as I think it's an occupational phenomenon. So it's not actually a diagnosis, but it is recognised as something that contributes to people's access to healthcare services. And some of the signs that you can recognise are physical signs like fatigue and poor health, but also a real lack of interest and that sense of apathy. You can feel busy but not productive. So you constantly, one of the metaphors I use is that you feel like a hamster on a wheel. So you're just working, but not getting anywhere, not deriving any satisfaction from it. And so that sense of meaning and purpose is really important. If we're going to spend 90,000 hours of our life at work, it's really important that it's doing something that we love. Yeah.
And are you loving what you're doing right now? I know that you were a teacher before, or in education field?
Yes. I was in academia for 10 years. I was a lecturer at one of the universities here in Brisbane. And for the first probably 5 or 6 years, I absolutely loved it, and it did bring me joy. But what I found was the further I progressed in my career and I sort of worked my way up the hierarchy, being a good girl as I was, it really took me further away from the things that I loved the most, and that was my students and teaching. So I found myself in a much more managerial, administrative role. I was spending more time in meetings than I was in the classroom, and that really didn't sit well with me. So there were other things that contributed, but once I made the decision to leave academia, it was really scary because that had been my identity for a really long time. But coaching and writing, and I still do teaching, but in professional development workshops, I really love all of it, and it really makes me feel very aligned with, it feels like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. Yeah.
It's really great. Few people are as courageous to leave what they are doing to do something completely different and then pursue that like with full passion. So that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I must admit it was the scariest thing I've done, and I talk about this in the book actually, that it wasn't even that my job stopped serving me. It was actually a pretty significant wake-up call when I realised that my son was being bullied really badly. And the reason that was sort of a turning point was I recognised that I was struggling so much in myself that I really wasn't available to him. So I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't put the dots, I didn't join the dots together. And when I realised it, it was this really pivotal point for me where I went, you know what, something's got to change, and it's going to be big. And it was scary, but I'm so glad that I did.
Awesome. I'm sorry that happened to your son.
Thank you.
He recovered from whatever he went through.
Yes, he did, and he's actually a very, very forgiving child, and he's taught me a lot about grace and forgiveness. My daughter, on the other hand, she was so mad. We had to convince her that it wasn't up to her to sort this out. She wasn't as forgiving as her brother, but no, we're all in a much better place now.
That's nice. And how's life in pandemic in Australia?
Yeah, we've been so fortunate, especially where I'm living in Queensland. We've had a very, very lucky escape, really. We've had about 8 weeks of lockdown earlier in the year, but we're back to, I won't say completely back to normal, but we've been able to resume most of our normal activities. In Melbourne and Victoria, in our, one of the southern states, it's been a lot harder for them, but they've just this week come out of their second phase lockdown. So hopefully it's all under control, and we're very fortunate and very grateful for that.
Nice. It's really, the reason I ask is since you are on the brighter side of this that we are facing. I'm in the US, and there are two sides of pandemic here. Like some people who are not following any rules or not social distancing, and some people who are very much believing that there's a pandemic and things are wrong. So there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stress, and a lot of us are teaching kids from home, and we have no background in teaching. So teachers are teaching virtual, where so there's a lot of burnout that I see.
Absolutely.
Right, and everybody wants to be perfect even in this situation. So how do you what would your message be to all these people who are trying to be perfect in the pandemic?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Yeah. I think the first thing is to really be kind to yourself and to lower expectations, because the reality is this is not normal, and it's not our new normal, and it's not our forever normal. And I think that's one thing that we do worry about. If we let our standards slip a little bit, we kind of feel like we're never going to get them back. And I know that's been a big concern with, screen time limits and those kinds of things. But my first piece of advice is to just be really kind to yourself and honour the fact that this is extremely unusual, and that once things do return to normal, those boundaries can be replaced. So for now, it's really about what can you do to be okay in this strange time. And if that does mean lowering expectations and letting them have more screen time or whatever it is, that's absolutely fine, because once they are allowed back out, their other activities will be so exciting and new again that those devices, I promise you, because I've seen it for my own kids, those devices won't hold the same appeal. So it's not as though it's a one direction, it's not all downhill from here once you get things back on track. So I think, that would be my first piece of advice.
Thank you. So who have been your influencers to look at that bright side and move away from perfectionism? And who has been your...
Yeah, I've done a lot of self-reflection and a lot of work with my own coach, and I think that's been really helpful. But I love Brené Brown's work on vulnerability, because I think part of perfectionism is actually that it is a form of protection, and it's protecting us from, that fear that what if I'm not good enough? So if I can control the quality of my outputs and the impression that I give to the world, then I'll be okay. So reading a lot of her work around vulnerability really helped me to see that actually that's the only way to be authentic. And that's how we really connect with people. And that perfectionism, it's kind of a shield, and it's a barrier to genuine connection, because it's showing a version of ourselves that it's not real, it's not true.
Do you feel though that a lot of people are afraid to be vulnerable because they might have been in situations where they might have been felt attacked or felt less than or something like that? So how do you handle that? That may be out of your... I'm just asking.
Yeah. No, I think for me it's about cultivating that courage from within. And, there's a difference between... let me get my words right. What I want to say is, I think when you make peace with who you really are, it matters less what other people think and say and do. So you're less vulnerable to those forms of attack. So for me, there's a real sense of self-trust and self-confidence that whatever comes, I'm okay, because I've made peace with, the rough edges and the scratchy bits that perhaps we're not overly proud of, but say, no, this is, that fully integrated version of me is the true version of me. And that helps me to sort of stand in my truth and say, well, if that's their impression, that's okay, that's their impression, and I don't have to actually accept it as my truth as well.
Thank you. That helps. Self-trust and self-confidence.
Yeah.
Coming back to the book, is there, tell us a little bit about your behind the scenes process. Like, how was it? Where did your perfectionism show up? And how did you deal with it?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because it sure did. It reared its ugly head several times throughout the process. So probably the biggest factor in getting past my perfectionism was a sense of accountability. So I actually went through a program where we went to a retreat, which was actually virtual, of course, being COVID times. And on the first night of that retreat, we actually announced our book's existence to the world and started accepting pre-sales. And so that was very, very frightening to me, because I was like, okay, there's no turning back now. But I found that to be super helpful, because the minute that one person paid me for that book, it meant that because integrity is really important to me and accountability is really important, I was going to produce something. And that also helped me recognize that it was more important to get it done than to get it perfect. Because the reality is, and all perfectionists everywhere can relate to this, you're probably never going to be satisfied, and you can keep tweaking and fixing and tinkering and refining. But the fact that I had promised this to people with a time frame that was flexible but reasonably short time frame, that really helped me to stay on track with it, because my fear of letting them down was greater than my need to get it perfect. So that was really helpful. And in terms of the process, I think for me, I love to write, and I found that part of it really quite therapeutic and cathartic, actually, because I was revisiting a lot of things in my past that have contributed to that sense of perfectionism and showing up in the world in that way. So it was a bit of a trip down memory lane, actually, and but there were roadblocks, and there were times. At one point, I was about probably 40% of the content was done, and I just had this feeling that this is all wrong and it's not right, and I need to change it. And so I took a few days breather and came back to it. And the other really notable event was when I was almost finished. So I had probably 98% of the content, and I needed to leave the computer because I went and had dinner, and I was sitting watching TV with my daughter, and I had this experience that I've never had before, and I think it was probably a panic attack, where my body just went hot and I felt a bit paralyzed, and I was like, I don't think I can breathe. And I realized that it was kind of my last resistance, that it's coming, it's really here. And so that felt scary, but I actually used that as impetus that this means that my message is important and I need to persist with it, because it's showing up in this form of fear and resistance, which says that it's something that matters to me.
Nice. It really helps. I just finished my first draft, and I'm sitting and thinking that this is not anybody wants to read, so I'm like scared to revisit it and do the second draft so that I can get it.
Yeah. Well, my best advice is that persist with it, because I'm sure that somebody does want to read it and it will hold value for people. And it really is just that fear of visibility that we all have. It's that perfectionism showing up. What if it's not good enough? And for me, I had to reframe it and go, what if it is? What if it does what I want it to do? And my hope for this book is that it'll help people to see.
You gave goosebumps. Hold on. Okay, so what ifs? So there's a song called What Ifs by Kane Brown. It's my favorite song.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to it every single day, but I try to change my what ifs. So it just gave me goosebumps. I just wanted to do that.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, yes, I do. I think it's really important to consider, what's the other alternative? What else could this mean? And what if someone's waiting for that book and need that message in the way that you're going to present it to the world? So stick with it. I'm sure it'll be wonderful.
That's an amazing way to get out of our perfectionism mode and move forward.
Absolutely. You make it about someone else. So you go, what if they need to hear my message? And that's more important than me feeling a bit embarrassed, because it may not come out exactly as I wanted it to, but the essence of the message is really important. So I think, stick with it and get that message out there. Someone's waiting for it.
Tell us a little bit about, where we can look for your book, so the link to it, and where it is available or when it would be released.
Sure, yeah.
And a little bit about where we can stalk you on the internet.
Absolutely. So there's a website that's under construction at the moment, which is just my name. So it's www.witteveen.com, and my book will be available there. It's also going to be available on Amazon really soon. So I'm just in the final stages of getting the ebook version available. But if you have a look, if you're on Facebook, you can find me. My business name is Astute Consulting Services, so you can find me there. I'm on LinkedIn as well, and all of my my social media profiles have links to the book available. I'm on Instagram at Kate Witteveen. So I'm around, and there's a link there that you can use to download or to request a copy, and that'll be in the post in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. So after writing the book and publishing, what are you looking forward to next? What's the next step for you?
Yeah, so I feel as though writing this first book really uncapped something for me. So I've already started thinking about the second one. So it felt like I just kind of needed to almost shift that one out of the way so I could clear some space. And I loved the writing process so much. And someone's actually said to me, would you be interested in writing for me? And I said, well, that's not something that I've thought about before, but actually I'm really keen to explore that as a possibility. So doing some ghostwriting as well. I mean, I love coaching, that really lights me up, but I also love writing. So for me, it's kind of an exciting possibility to write my own books, but also to take other people's ideas and bring them to life as well. Yeah.
Yay. That's a lot of new things going on then for you.
It is, yes.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, me too. It's like I get these ideas. I just need to find some time to implement them all, but be patient with the process and let it come as it will. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you so much, Kate, for being with us today. And everybody who's watching this, I'm going to post links to Kate's website, her book, and her consulting services. So go stalk her on the internet. Don't stalk her, just follow her.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so lovely to chat with you.